Thank you very much for joining our webinar. We will be starting with a video. This will also give us time to all participants to settle down so that we can start immediately with the end of the video. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first webinar of local governments and municipal authorities towards the 27th Conference of Parties of UN climate negotiations, which will take place at the end of this year. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability. And ICLE is acting as the focal point of local governments and municipal authorities constituency to the UNFCCC. This is a series of webinars that we are in, and this is designed as a monthly webinar. And every third Wednesday, we are having these meetings in the morning and in the afternoon sessions. We are recording these sessions. Participation to these webinars are announced in a number of platforms. So there may be possibility that there may be colleagues who are not necessarily member or familiar with the LGMA. So we would respect, if you can respect, that there may be some abbreviations or themes that you may not be very much familiar with, but we will do our best. And it's also an opportunity for us internally to have consultations. So some of the information can be a bit sensitive. So we also, again, would like you to, again, keep this information at this stage for your own information, but give or wait for some updates from us in terms of how to publicize the information presented here. So with this, I also would like to remind that we are recording these sessions, and it will be published in ICLE's YouTube channel, and it will be made available as well from our resources. With that, I'd like to tell that this is really an hour-long session, and we usually start with a presentation around 35-40 minutes, and then we open the floor for questions, interventions. If there's any burning questions, you can type into the Q&A or chat box, and if there's extremely needed, we can respond. But we prefer to have this discussion at the end so that we make an overview, complete picture available. With that in mind, let me continue our presentation for today. Obviously, we are now moving in an era where we are building on the outcomes of the Glasgow Climate Pact, and that will be guiding us. For those who are not familiar with the LGMA, we are engaged in the UNFCCC process since '95. We are one of the 3 constituencies that has been engaged in this process. But the whole effort is that in the UNFCCC, the text of the convention and the Kyoto Protocol, there was no recognition to local governments. This was a bit contradictory to the Earth Summit. Local Agenda 21 was a legacy of the Earth Summit, and UNFCCC was one of those legacies as well. But this was not the case in the case of UNFCCC. So we have been starting, especially on the way towards Copenhagen Summit in 2009, to raise the profile that we have to be engaged in this process. Due to the ups and downs in the negotiations, we have elevated our work, especially in the Paris Agreement. We achieved our biggest success, and since then we have continued in the implementation of the Paris Agreement as well. The LGMA brings together around 30 or plus networks of local and regional governments. Obviously, the number of networks that we are connected to is more than those who are accredited to UNFCCC. UNFCCC accreditation process is a bit cumbersome, it takes time, and there are some procedures that not every network could fulfill. So in this kind of webinars or our mailing list, we make sure that we receive inputs or we inform a widest family. But in terms of engaging with the UNFCCC, we respect the procedures of UNFCCC. And our mission is to connect our inputs to the negotiation agendas, to ensure our visibility, to improve our dialogues and collaboration with the UNFCCC Secretariat, but also the parties. So in that sense, IFLE is acting as the focal point of this group, and we're delighted to roll out these all these achievements all together with our partners around the world. The video you have watched is our 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement in 2020. We would be preparing a new one because with the climate pact from Glasgow, we have a new second phase. So we'd like to have another refreshed video, but this is giving the notion that with the Paris Agreement, a new world is being designed. This should be multi-level, and this is exactly what we have managed to get in the Glasgow Climate Pact. We have several links to videos and presentations so that you can access online as well. We are particularly using our citiesandregions.org as our landing page for our advocacy documents or updates. So feel free to check these files or check this website regularly. Just for a capturing of our work in the past 2 years, we had monthly webinars. We had guests from the UK and Chilean presidency, but also the champions, but also other partners from UNCCD and others as well. We have also email updates regularly. We're proud of our expanded membership into the process, especially with the accreditation at Bonn. I was alerted by one of our partners that my voice was not well audible, so thanks for this kind recommendation. And we have a new roadmap as well, so we will get back to that again on that front soon. Before Glasgow, we were hoping that we are going towards multi-level action, and in Glasgow we said that time for multi-level action has come. Just for you, if you want to join us in future webinars, we have scheduled the dates fixed for every month, and we have our registration link also visible in our website, so that you can choose to choose which ones you want to join and put them in your calendars, so that you can keep yourself informed with our updates. There are several updates, especially because our last meeting was in December. Obviously, the year started and rapidly, which is typical that at the beginning of the year, the country who will host the presidency is getting up their delegation, and then the country who has hosted the summit gives support and provides the basic guidance as well. So this was the picture for the year 2021, 2022 under Chile and the UK. So with the conclusion of the UK or the Glasgow summit, what we now have the picture of a UK presidency team, which is consisting of COP26 President Alok Sharma, high-level climate action champion Nigel Topping. These are the two officially UNFCCC mandated posts. All the other posts that you see here are assigned by the presidency
based on their own priorities and capacities as national, let's say, authorities. And they have been adding values because these introduce new, fresh experience, but these are not mandated by the UNFCCC. That is important to know. Over the past year and even 2 years in the preparatory phase, the UK COP26 president has been creating a number of consultative bodies, both for UK partners, but also globally. And obviously, when a country finishes hosting the COP, the huge machinery of the staff who are either seconded from the different ministries for a certain limited time or hired for a limited period of time, it is possible to expect that these staff may start to leave the presidency's team, that they may be continuing with a less number of people because it costs much budget and priorities as well. And it is assumed that the upcoming the presidency will be starting to build their team, and these two teams will hand over appropriately. We at the moment we would like to hear more updates from the presidency, but as far as we know, there are certain teams continuing. There we would be seeing with this new bodies, the councils, advisory councils, how much they will continue their work. In some of them we have been involved. For example, constituency focal points that we are attending, and there were UK civil society, UK mayors and regions body advisory councils. So we'll see how this will evolve. But one important point from the presidency is, at the beginning of the process, the COP26 president invited Eric Garcetti, mayor of Los Angeles at that time and chair of C40 at that time, as the only local elected leader in the COP26 Friends of COP team. Now, what we know, Mayor Garcetti has been assigned with a new position. He is the US ambassador to India, starting his job soon. He is already on the way to stepping down from his office, mayor's office. He has already stepped down from his role in the C40 chair role. Because Friends of COP is more an individual assignment, it may be possible that Mayor Garcetti can continue to serve in this Friends of COP in his capacity as US ambassador. That's possible. But we are hoping that Mayor Garcetti's, let's say, mission, which is the voice of local and regional governments, could be filled by another local leader who is active in the office. This would be again under the authority of the president. He is the right to choose whoever he wants to work with. It may be possible, you may remember, Mayor Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, is assigned as elected as the chair of C40. He may be taking up this position. Another leader of C40 can be invited, or another network could be invited for nomination of such a position. And in ideal case, maybe we could wish for more than one local and regional government being part of Friends of COP, so that we improve our relation with the Friends of COP community. So that's part of the UK story. The important update from the Egyptian government is that a couple of days ago, actually, starting from Sunday, COP26 President Alok Sharma has been visiting Egypt. He started his journey to Egypt first, and then he extended to United Arab Emirates, which will be the host of the next the COP after Egypt on behalf of Asian group. And in these couple of days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, there were several closed meetings and some public announcements. One of the public announcements is that the COP27 president designate is the task of president designate of COP27 will be conducted by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt, His Excellency Sameh Shukri. This is assigned by the government of Egypt, and the second UNFCCC related appointment, which is the high-level climate action champion, it's not announced yet. So we are waiting to have this update anytime soon. We heard that on Monday, both Alok Sharma and Nigel Topping, on behalf of the COP26 presidency, will convene several events. At 12 GMT on Monday, Alok Sharma will make a speech that will be describing his priorities for during 2022. And Nigel Topping will also convene an event, a webinar or a workshop, which will be primarily kicking off the consultation phase for the criteria of the Race to Zero. But we assume in both of those announcements, there may be some more updates, especially from the high-level climate action champion of the Egyptian government under the COP27 presidency team. There is an important announcement also that came up recently during this couple of days, that the Minister of Environment of Egypt, Her Excellency Yasmin Fuad, who has been involved in negotiations is in the UNFCCC, as well as she was the president of the biodiversity COP14 when it was hosted in Sharm el-Sheikh again in 2018. She is assigned as the ministerial coordinator and envoy, or special envoy, for the government of Egypt. So the important point is that this is again an internal assignment. It is accountable to the Egyptian government, but UNFCCC does not foresee such a position, and it does not have any governing role or decision-making role in the UNFCCC COP26 presidency, according to what we know as of today. But these kind of appointments and assignments are also part of the beauty that every experience, every leadership brings a new value, and we will see how this will evolve and provide input to the process. Just to recap, when we left Glasgow, what did we announce or what did we celebrate? First of all, we said that time for multi-level action has come. We have a preambular paragraph in the Glasgow Climate Pact, which says that the parties are highlighting the urgent need for multi-level and cooperative action. So there are two elements of this paragraph. First of all, it is part of the Glasgow Climate Pact, which is opening the second phase of the Paris Agreement. Second phase of the Paris Agreement was not easy. Even Kyoto Protocol did not survive effectively in the second phase. It only delivered its work primarily in the first phase. So having Paris Agreement continuing into the second phase with full of its rule book, that is a very big achievement. Therefore, it is important that in the second phase, we are much stronger than where we were at the beginning of the Paris Agreement first phase. In the beginning of the Paris Agreement first phase, we were in the preamble, and there parties were recognizing the importance of engagement of all levels of government. They were just recognizing that we exist. But in this text, they highlight the urgent need for multi-level and cooperative action. And in fact, let's remember, this phrase multi-level and cooperative action was a result of the intense advocacy of the LGMA, both in person in the last days of Glasgow, in Glasgow on site, but also numerous partners globally who have been reaching to their delegations virtually or online tools, so that it is our success that we elevated our recognition, and even we have elevated our engagement, so that the term multi-level now is part of the Paris Agreement and Glasgow Climate Pact. Why this is important? One example, the Kyoto Protocol, when it was adopted in 1970, included only one sentence about flexibility mechanisms. And this one sentence evolved into a huge market, the new community, clean development mechanism, emissions trading now, which is talking about billions of euros and thousands of experts and a huge concept, a new way of work. Just from one sentence, we have reached to this new way of engagement in the global efforts. So from this one sentence, and even one part of the sentence, even part of the paragraph, we can now squeeze, we can build a new world, we can open a new frontier, we can explore a new way of engagement into the UNFCCC process, which means time for multi-level action has come, building on our achievements. But of course, the Glasgow Climate Pact is even more stronger and important because there are so many other references to local energy governments across the documents. We're talking about the decisions under the UNFCCC and the decision under the Paris Agreement. There is a strong, for the first time, reference to constituencies. There is a welcoming of the Marrakesh Partnership improved work program, which we as LGMA and most of our partners have been supporting. There is a very strong reference to youth participation in local decision making. And in fact, with the climate emergency declarations, many cities, many regions were already implementing such experiences. We have seen in the case of Bonn, we have seen in the case of Recife or Scotland, that they have been responding to the demand from the citizens, primarily led by youth, so that they declare climate emergency, they commit to climate neutrality. So this is again a big opportunity for local regional governments to say that we can contribute much better to the delivery of the Paris Agreement. And very, very importantly, the national determined contributions were presumably be expected to be presented every 5 years. There were some of them, around 100 plus of them were presented, and out of this, 60 of them had elevated their ambition with local energy agreements. That was our biggest strength on the way to COP26, but it was collectively not enough. We were far away from the 1.5 degree goal levels of emission reduction. Therefore, parties decided that they will bring a new NDC by the end of 2022. This is important because the race to zero, to race to resilience, our commitments, any of the announcements that was done in the Glasgow over those 12 days, it is now possible to reflect all of them to the NDCs. And only if these are reflected to the NDCs, then there will be trust and there will be accountability that these commitments for net zeros, race to zeros will be much more implementable. That's why going back to every nation and ask them to bring a new NDC, even they submitted or prepared one before Glasgow, is important, so that we have to put this into priority, and this will be part of our discussions. In Glasgow, we also had a major achievement on market mechanisms, on the non-market approach, especially, particularly putting sustainable urbanization. We are starting to achieve some progress. There is at least a reference to local, subnational, and national context in the design of the non-market approaches. And we would like to particularly work throughout the year in the submissions that we would like to continue to push for or advocate for sustainable integrated urban and territorial development to be one of the non-market approaches as well. So in that sense, it has just started. So that's good news. Action for Climate Empowerment has adopted a Glasgow work program. That is extremely valuable because public participation, access to information is a huge machinery that can facilitate ambitious action. We have seen this in the UNFCCC and others. So we will be working with it, because in the Action for Climate Empowerment, there's even more reference to local energy governments. There's much more opportunities that without, we were having difficulties, but with this official UNFCCC document inviting our active engagement, we can make our multi-level actions much more visible. These are the UN level achievements, but in our constituency as LGMA, we also made remarkable outcomes. We have our pavilion, we have our roadmap, we have thousands of cities committing to Race to Zero. We had 400 plus delegations across 2 weeks hosting numerous events. We had Glasgow Food Declaration, Edinburgh process. Financing instruments were developed. Scotland committed for voluntary contribution to loss and damage. US, Japan, and US, China made announcements on subnational climate action. So many things that we should be proud of. Our documents, our impact reports, and guidance documents. So we are really aiming to accelerate building on the outcomes of the Glasgow Climate Pact, and in relation other efforts. What does it mean now? Obviously, with so many achievements and so many mandates and so many expectations, it is now time for us to make sure that our internal planning is fit for this purpose, so that we have to make LGMA fit for a multi-level action that delivers results. This means we have to improve our working relations and governance so that we are much more proactively and rapidly, robustly responding to the new expectations and the new dynamics. And this was exactly what we have committed in our local climate roadmap that was adopted in Glasgow. So as a summary, what we are proposing, and this is just a kickoff. I mean, we have started this discussion in the past couple of months, especially from Glasgow onwards, but this is presented for the first time from our side as focal point. Obviously, in the morning, we had some discussions. We will continue the discussion. So this is not conclusion at the moment, but we believe it will be kicking off an important dimension to our work. So we are proposing to have an LGMA steering committee. This will be building on the 3 groups that we'll be working on. First one is the regional groups. The second one is thematic groups. And the third one is COP working group. The logic is that the more the Paris Climate Agreement is decentralized and more relying on national, the work at the national and regional level is becoming more important. The whole Americas, Asians, Africans, Europe should all have more discussions, and that also follows the design of the regional climate weeks. So we want the LGMA constituency members to be much more focusing on these regional priorities and providing their inputs and experiences in that level, connecting to their national governments and make sure that the dialogue continues on. And especially when UNFCCC asks any input, we can easily go back to our regional groups so that they can bring us experience and information. There is another dimension, which is thematic working groups. Thematic working groups are important. We will see now in the future, in a couple of minutes, how diverse and complex the themes are now evolving in the UNFCCC agenda. It's impossible to track all of these by one person, by even one organization. We are almost receiving on a weekly basis an invitation for a submission, an invitation for a workshop, an invitation for nomination of a participant for a delegation or others. And this cannot be handled, and this should not be only one person or one institution's job. We will see how complex it is. Therefore, we have to be experts, we have to be much more skilled, and we have to be coordinated. In that sense, that's why thematic groups are needed. And finally, you all are aware, COP is traveling around the world for the moment. As long as there's no new modality, every year there will be a different country, different region, different city hosting COP. And conditions are different. The conditions of the national government, the groups, the political agenda, they're all different. Therefore, it is important that we assign our most skilled and most capacitated and most important partners to lead our work in this presidency and in this COP planning, so that we are well planned and well prepared for our engagement at the end of the year. So this would be a special working group. And obviously, if you look at the agenda, a COP working group has to be annual, because once the COP is over, then there will be another host, and there will be different partners, different stakeholders, and different networks who could lead that, because regional capacities could be different. The other two, which is regional and thematic, it needs more continuity. It needs much more getting together. I think, therefore, a mandate for 2 years could be more realistic. And of course, those who are in the working group could continue, but maybe they may change their leadership time to time. So the logic is that from each of these three, let's say, big caucuses, and within this, especially on the regional and thematic, we will have subgroups. We will have regional groups for, as I said, all continents and regions. We will have thematic groups, we'll see. From there, we may have co-chairs, co-leads, and co-facilitators. So they can all be compiled as a steering committee of the LGMA. And this group could be the ones who could feed into this monthly webinars. So it's not just me providing you an update and then asking you to provide feedback, but rather every responsible partner provides their updates. They are the ones who could take our development of our positions, nomination of our speakers, and tracking the relations, so that then we as LGMA focal point can coordinate and manage the linkage between the appropriate processes. We could consider every year to meet at the beginning of the year in February, back to the global task force meetings hosted by UCLG in Barcelona, virtually or in person or hybrid. And we could now start to also use Daring Cities, the global forum on climate emergency, which is presumably is now planned to be taking every year at the beginning of October, which will be very likely just 1.5 months or 1 month before COPs, as the moment where we conclude our position and strategies for COP, so that this is also our second annual, let's say, gathering, and this will give us the opportunity that we will be well prepared for the COP that will take place at the end of the year. So let me give you examples of thematic work, how complex and how badly needed to be focusing on this. If you look at the UNFCCC homepage, there are upper bars, and this screenshot is the menu on the upper bar. There's so many different initiatives, registries, portals. Some of them have a rationale, some of them have a different meaning, different mission. So in all these, there are mechanisms that we can engage or influence. Another, if you go to the second bar below the logo, there's another group of menus. For example, when you look at the topics, you see on the left bar so many agendas. That is all of them we are doing some work at the local level on climate action. And in fact, one day in the future, probably we will see urbanization or multi-level action as one of the topics that UNFCCC can cover. So that will be our also an ultimate dream as well. But in all these agendas, from education to loss and damage, from adaptation to mitigation, we have a lot of things, and that's why we're saying that it is time for multi-level action. So we have to define how we can engage. Each of them have different modalities. And this is the UNFCCC agendas. Then you can see there's another box in the second bar that says climate action. And in fact, over the past 5 years or so, especially after the Paris Agreement, we spent more time into this agenda, which is Marrakesh Partnership, NASCA Global Reporting Platform, Race to Zeros, and Climate Momentum for Change. But this doesn't mean that we will not weaken our engagement there. Yes, we will continue to be there because climate action is speaking to our heart. But if we are serious that the delivery of Paris and Glasgow can be done through multi-level collaboration, we have to be expert in, we have to be very specific on how we can contribute. The agendas on the left bar as well. So that is the reason why we have to be much more robust and much more professional. Here, the third part of the story, UNFCCC is consisting of a number of bodies. These are decision-making bodies. These are processes that have their own decision-making structures, that have their own stakeholder engagement modalities. And unfortunately, none of them is equal. None of them is similar to the other. Each of them has a different way of engagement. Sometimes we have a seat in the nominations. Sometimes we are observers. Sometimes we don't have any role, but we can still submit positions or can ask to be invited. So each of them, of course, also have a different set of skills. I mean, from technology to adaptation fund, from Nairobi Work Program to capacity building, Paris Committee on Capacity Building. These are the bodies that they are now desperately inviting us, and with huge expectations, inviting local governments to be part of it. We as ICLE are there because of our experience and the depth of information. Some other partners are also there as well. But we collectively as LGMA should also be actively involved, and that we complement each other and we feed each other with the information we receive from all these processes. Again, if you look at the bodies section of the UNFCCC, it goes like on and on and on. You have the supreme bodies, you have subsidiary bodies, you have constituted bodies, you have funds and entities. There are new ones coming up. Santiago Network is coming up, for example, on loss and damage. So it's not, the good thing is that these are all now agreed. There's no negotiation whether this will be achieving or not. But it is not clear how much they are delivering, and it is not very visible how much we are engaged in the implementation or in the consultation. So each of those bodies, we have to assign a number of our members in the LGMA, and we can say that there are areas that we don't have expertise. That's possible. But we are confident that in every platform, in everybody, we have a lot to say, and we can have a lot to communicate and still continue our advocacy. Therefore, we have to get together different expertise of networks from different parts of the world, coordinated throughout the year, and sharing our background so that we then help each other, that our voices are heard and we are engaged as appropriately to make sure multi-level action delivers the Paris Climate Agreement and Glasgow Climate Pact. With that, now, this is a new update on our plans for COP27. You remember we have presented our initial structure in the last webinar in December. Based on the first presentation, we received a number of positive feedback from a number of partners, and we now expect more to come because everybody has finished their end of year break, so they may be just digesting all this information. So there may be no new responses coming up as well. Under this condition, the structure looks as if, in the sense that, especially on the co-facilitator role for the COP27 working group, there are more and more candidates or voluntary networks. Original proposal was UCLGR in Africa and ICLE Africa, but in time we received interest officially expressed by FMDV, European Committee of the Regions, who expressed their willingness to work with us and to take more role in the planning of this process. We are expecting even some other partners who have not expressed explicitly their interest, but there may be more communication. For example, Rwanda Local Government Association this was discussed. RALGA was the first and only African network in the COP26 working group, and they delivered the closing remarks and the LGMA. So obviously they can continue the work there here. Climate Change or UCLGMA, these are the partners that may be potentially coming up or stepping up. We heard from others, CMR, Regions 4, CDP, CC35, ICLA Europe, who all expressed their readiness to work on this working group. Obviously, once again, because it's very specific for Africa or this year, it doesn't need to be that every network should be part of this working group. But by not being in this working group doesn't mean that you will not be contributing. Again, by being involved doesn't give any of us more authority than what we should be giving us. So that this is a facilitation role. This is a support process, but we have to make sure everybody feels that they're home, just like we did in the multi-level action pavilion. We are building the home of subnationals, all cities, regions, and metropolitan towns and governments of the world and local and regional governments. So we are still expecting other partners to come up, but I think it's possible to expect that because of the diversity, and which is our strength, we may be open to the idea that we may have more than 2 co-facilitators in this working group. So let's discuss this and further. We still have some time. I think in the next couple of weeks we will continue to work on that. With this, I would like to conclude also with the revised calendar, which is more or less similar to what we have been originally sharing with you. Some of them, there are some updates. For example, Biodiversity COP will very likely be postponed for the second half of the year. There are some concrete updates on some of the calendar events. But let's remember, this year we will have 3 COPs of the Rio Conventions: biodiversity, nature, and climate change, and desertification. 2 of them will be in Africa and 1 of them in China. It's very clear this year will be the COP of the Global South. We will have UN Environment Assembly, but also the Stockholm 50th anniversary. We will have World Urban Forum. Even though it's not a negotiation session, it is an opportunity to raise profile. We will have 3 of the global networks, ICLA, C40, and UCLG, having their global summits of triennial or biennial. This will, of course, introduce certain opportunities and also certain overlaps in terms of our calendar. Regional climates will be continuing. We will be continuing to engage in the G20 and G7 process. Indonesia and Jakarta will be in the G20, and Germany and Deutsche Städtetag will be also important partner in the G7 and Urban 7 process. Meanwhile, we have also seen a Race to Zero partners meeting yesterday. We are still having waiting for updates from the champions, especially when the Egyptian one is not assigned yet. But there's a basic calendar is opening up. We will be expecting that there will be a review of the commitments criteria. There will be a review of the tracking of the commitments so far, how much we're expecting to deliver our commitments, especially if we are serious on Race to Zero and 2030. There is a tendency that a generic 7% per year reduction has to be achieved by anyone who has to reach to halving the goals, halving the emissions by 2030. How many of cities, how many of regions, how many of business, how many of universities will be able to meet this commitment? We have to see. Obviously, the expectation is that a huge number of partners will not be able to fulfill this commitment yet, considering the thousands of them who have committed. But I think the power of this ratchet mechanism, that making institutions be bold to commit, but then making it frank that they are not there yet, therefore asking support, is the best way to raise ambition, to be confident, to be trustworthy, to be open, and to be sincere that we are aiming to reach these goals. So, but how this mechanics will function, it will depend on the modalities led by champions, but we believe there will be positive signals coming up as well. With that, I'd like to give a break to my presentation for today's especially my dog is also asking me to pay some attention to her. But for the moment, I see a number of chat box messages have come up. What we could do that those who have put their remarks into the chat box, we can make you speak, and then you speak your inputs. Meanwhile, I turn off my microphone, and so that we can listen to you. And if not, I can also read out for those who have been left the session or not. But I already see David from UN Capital Development Fund raising hand. Patricia, if we can make David open the mic, and so that we continue with him, that will be great.
Thank you very much indeed, Yunus, for this fantastic update, and Happy New Year to everybody. Very clear and very exciting. I just a couple of words on what you've said. First, really endorse your point that you know, in Glasgow we were out, and then thanks to you and the team and everybody, a lot of people working on lots of levels, we got ourselves back in, and at a higher level than before, as you pointed out, an elevated recognition of multi-level governance. So that was a huge achievement. Now, to build on that with in terms of the structure that you're talking about with these thematic groups, I'd like to share a little bit of the experience with UNFCCC. So I've been involved, and my colleagues are involved in two parts of UNFCCC. There's the Standing Committee on Finance, which we attend, and there's the local expert group connected with the Adaptation Committee. So on the Standing Committee on Finance, you know, it doesn't have any money. So I think people often make the mistake thinking that the Standing Committee on Finance is something that actually has money. It doesn't. But the Green Climate Fund, of course, and those parallel funds is where the money is. But I think in terms of the non-market approach and getting, if you like, intergovernmental fiscal transfers, fiscal decentralization, local government finance, seen as being a key delivery tool for the goals of the Paris Agreement and Glasgow, it is a good place to be. And I think if we can sharpen our focus on entities like the Standing Committee on Finance, so that the point we're making is not about projects, isolated actions. We're saying there's an architectural feature here. The architecture of climate finance needs to understand that local government finance is a way to accelerate NDC and NAP delivery. And of course, that's country specific as how they do that. That is certainly the place to be. Of course, there is always the issue of the political economy of local government finance, and so the multi-level government and phraseology and the way of phrasing it so that it's a shared burden between central and local governments, and it's not the zero-sum game, central versus local. It's very important to maintain that, because there's no way anything that appears to be kind of shouting for local governments would get that far in the Standing Committee on Finance, given the composition of that committee from people with a central government perspective. But I think we'd be really happy to contribute there. Second element I wanted to make was the local expert group on adaptation and the adaptation committees. There, I think a little bit more progress has been made, particularly in terms of developing countries through the locale mechanism, which has now been recognized by the LEG group and by the adaptation committee as one of the implementation mechanisms for Paris. And there, of course, what the argument is that adaptation is inherently local, and therefore you need to use the local government finance system to drive that adaptation, particularly in developing countries, and development partners can come in on board, and we have this mechanism that enables reporting, global reporting, but local adaptation. So I think, again, that can be built on within the adaptation committee, and I've been delighted to work with colleagues on those two, on how we can work on those two thematic committees. I think what makes it very interesting, UNFCCC, is that the LGMA alliance, if you like, will bring this great north-south alliance, because it combines north and south, and to have advocates from northern cities and southern cities making exactly the same point will be very powerful. And if we can find a way to articulate that, we'd be more than happy to contribute. I'll stop there. Thank you so much indeed, Yunus.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for both your support throughout years, and especially this time in COP Glasgow. We were much more actively involved together. We benefit from your experience and wisdom and your network, and we look forward to continuing. This is exactly that we would like to build upon our experience in Glasgow. So we are seeing you as one of the natural member of the finance technical working group, hopefully leading it by some capacity. One important information: the Standing Committee on Finance, you may remember in 2019, they convened a special theme was sustainable cities, and we were one of the focal points there. We have worked with FMDV, C40, and others as ICLE, and there's a nice report coming up. But one of the weaknesses of Standing Committee on Finance is that how much actionable this outcomes is coming up from this process is a bit questionable. And that's one of the beauties or the weaknesses of the UNFCCC. There are so many bodies, but which one is the most effective ones? And considering our capacities, maybe we have to rethink about it. But of course, by the time 2019, the Article 6 was not finished yet. So what we are saying is that now, we are not saying that we should not interest ourselves to the Standing Committee on Finance, but it's obvious that the now submissions to the Article 6.8, now that it is now open, it gives us much more result-oriented engagement that we have to push forward. And of course, colleagues who will be involved in the finance working group can tell us what other agendas that has to be followed. You remember FMDV was leading our work on Global Alliance of Subnational Banks. R20 is working now this big global green climate fund, subnational fund. So there are so many things going on, so that now they all have to channel it to the UNFCCC process. And that's exactly the difference we want to introduce compared to other initiatives that's all going on outside the LGMA. We made it our work a lot in other processes, but now it's time to bring this to the UNFCCC in order to make a change, because multi-level is now part of the Paris Agreement and Glasgow Pact. So well received all these contributions, and we definitely like to continue working with you. Also, especially if you're with your network as UN Capital Development Fund. By the way, Heloise, you were asking, Heloise from Regions 4 is actually is leading our work on also Regions Adapt and Resilience. Heloise, David is the director of the UN Capital Development Fund, which are particularly very active in Africa as well. So therefore, we look forward to your active engagement, David, with your teams and partners into the African COP, hopefully also Middle East COP, but also Mediterranean COP in some senses. Felix, our dear friend Felix, is also provided a very valuable input on the COP27, let's say, rumors or updates. I couldn't read all of them, Felix, but if you like, you can just summarize it in a couple of minutes, so that feel free to open up your mic if needed. I see from Anne from Geneva Cities Hub a question about the UN Environment Assembly 5.2. Yes, and there was a rumor, or there was an effort to postpone it to April, but now it is back to the original date, which is end of February. So the original date is not changed. It will be on 23rd of February to early March. And there will be a special Cities and Regions Summit, particularly led by UN Environment Program, and many networks of the global networks of local and governments and their partners, because we are also having a very advantageous GEF7 project, Urban Shift. So there will be a Cities and Regions Summit as well. So we're happy to connect to you there. There are some updates going on. So happy to connect there as well. And by the way, I think we should also include the UNECE Mayors Forum into our calendar, which will happen in, I think, end of April. I think that was forgotten in my update, but we should add this as well. Yes, Felix, anything if you want to add, feel free to turn on your mic. But as far as I can understand, you have provided some behind the doors discussions about how the evolution of the race to zero and race to resilience and others is evolving, and very clear that was the explanation yesterday. Rather than the number of commitments now, the emphasis will be much more the delivery, transparency, and accountability. So that's why we raised this issue yesterday as well. Even within our network, within ICLE, within the cities race to zero, we're almost sure there are hundreds of our committed cities and regions will not be able to demonstrate that they're on track for 2030. But this should not be a reason for them to not to commit or not to be explicitly admitting this, because that should turn out into our biggest ammunition to ask for more resources, technical capacities, financial resources, so that our goal is correct, our current situation is not correct or not enough, therefore we need more support. That should be the narrative. In fact, we started to use this narrative since Copenhagen. That was the spirit of the Carbon Climate Registry when we opened this transparency of our commitments. It's so good that all these things are now coming on track. I mean, CDP reporting now is coming up. So transparency is already 10 years ago was seen as a weakness. But now wise leaders, wise institutions can say that, yes, I'm transparent. I may not be ready, but I am willing to be delivering this, and I'm facing this challenge, and I want you to help me. I think that is the narrative that should be the voice for everyone. And of course, if you're successful, why cannot you do it? So here is that information. Let's share it. Let's make sure this is disseminated across the world. Okay. Felix, we will keep your notes in our updates so that it's at least in the written form. That's very helpful. Anne says that April 4 to 5 is the UNECE Mayors Forum in Geneva. It will be virtual. That's good. At least important, because this year you will hear more of events, and it will be important to see which ones are hybrid, which ones are the virtual ones, and it's very likely that almost all of them will be hybrid as the default, so that there will be always a virtual element somehow connected to it. This is what we have to prepare ourselves. This is important also for the June sessions, because as of today, we also don't know how much the details of the modalities in Bonn will happen, because in Germany, we are still hearing or seeing the Corona COVID-19 figures are significantly high. The measures are being included, expanded. How will Germany will be conducting or providing guidance or providing support to the UNFCCC for in-person meetings here in Bonn? This is something that has to be talked with German government, City of Bonn, State of North Rhine-Westphalia, and the UNFCCC. So it's possible to expect new updates on the modalities and the dates and the calendars of those events. So let's be prepared for that. Evan from CMR, she's also confirming. CMR Platforma is also confirming to join the LGMA working group. Fantastic. Platforma is also doing a lot of work in Africa as well, and also in Europe, and the thematic group on finance and adaptation and resilience. Great, thanks, Eva. Felix underlines that this year UNDRR is also taking its annual. What is the terminology, Felix? Is this? It's not COP. Is this? What was their terminology? Just Sendai conference. UNDRR conference. I mean, of course, UNDRR is an important partner for us. We are supporting the Making Cities Resilient 2030 campaign, ICLE, UCLG, C40, so many networks. We are particularly excited that this is also supporting the Race to Resilience. and it's good that the such UN programs are continuing in the future in this progress. UN Habitat is also part of this work. So therefore, we have to follow the UNDRR conference. Our proposal was that the steering committee of the Making Cities Resilient campaign should be also guiding us in our engagement in the UNDRR biennial conferences, because it's also not so easy to handle so many different stakeholder engagement mechanisms. As we said, every UN institution is different. Within UN, one entity, the different bodies also follow different practices. This is especially the case for UNFCCC. Okay, midterm review of Sendai, and yes, let's see how much we can provide input to that. Thanks for reminding us, Felix. Are there any additional points for today? We have 4 more minutes left. I hope we were able to respond the inputs. Heloise from our Regions 4 is also supporting the idea of working groups, creating of working groups. Adaptation working group, definitely you should be there as Regions Adapt. So we look forward to your contributions, Heloise from Regions 4. So I think that was a great start for the year. We thank you all for your interest and collaboration. We will share with you the links of this webinar, obviously, but also we'll start to share this information in our shared files. We look forward to making more concrete progress. As I said, next Monday is important for COP26 presidency announcements. Regional week for Middle East and North Africa is coming again in end of February. UN Environment Assembly and others are rolling out in the weeks ahead. So definitely a busy year ahead. But I'm confident that with the confidence and the motivation that is resulting from Glasgow, the spirit of Glasgow will help us to rally further even higher on the multi-level action delivers as the motto of LGMA this year. So with that, thank you a lot and have a nice day and have a nice week and have a nice evening to all of you.